The freshman year of a look inside the second age of Middle-earth ended with a boom. Well, a few booms. We got answers to who certain characters are, and we had big hanging threads for what's to unfold in the confirmed second season. Yup, the Rings of Power has a lot to clear up with the next installment of episodes. The question is, what should we expect? Stick around while we list off some of the main plot elements to expect for Season 2. First off, there's Sauron versus Adar. Those with a Prime Video subscription will remember that Season 1 teed up a grotesque-looking chap as potentially being Sauron. Instead, we found out he was Adar, the father of the orcs. We find out later from a conversation between Adar and Galadriel that the former believes he killed Sauron due to his treatment of the orcs. How sweet of him, right? Well, he's in for a shock, as we now know Galadriel's former companion, Halbrand, is Sauron, alive and well. Furthermore, the last we saw of him, he was cloaked up and headed back to the Southlands, which is now branded as Mordor. It's safe to expect that Sauron is going to be challenging Adar for control of Mordor and the orcs, and that they're both going to be playing dirty. Now, we know Sauron will be the powerful leader that's spoken of and has a menacing presence throughout the Lord of the Rings books. So it's expected that Adar is going to be fatally struck down at some point, probably by the Dark Lord himself. Should we expect it in Season 2? Possibly. It would make for a good place to leave Sauron in the next season finale. Maybe also getting to see the Dark Tower, Baladur, begin to be built as well. But with Adar being quite a good nemesis for the villain to have, it would make sense to keep him around a bit longer. Let's just rest in the assurance that they'll be locking horns during the next season. Next, we have the Sack of Eregion. The Sack of what? I hear you shout in Elvish. Bear with us and let us explain this one. This is the battle that kicks off the War of the Elves and Sauron. Quite suitable, wouldn't you say? The conflict is caused by Sauron attacking the Elves of Eregion in an effort to take the Rings of Power for his own gain. The battle has a few elements that would work perfectly for the show. Firstly, Eregion does fall at this point, which would be a mighty visual in itself. Secondly, it features Elrond joining the battle with the relief force before being caused to retreat into the Misty Mountains and build a fortress in a valley, which would go on to be known as Rivendell. Thirdly, and most emotionally, it sees Celebrimbor killed at the hands of Sauron himself. Now, why would this work for the next season? Well, The Hollywood Reporter happened to mention in a conversation with the show's writers, Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne, that Season 2 promises to give you a, and we quote, massive 2-episode battle. We imagine this would be part of the next season's climax. So wouldn't this fit nicely? It would show Sauron going full evil on the elves. It would give the big battle hype that Lord of the Rings is known for. It would give the emotional death of a character we're now quite familiar with. The battle is over the Rings of Power, which is what the show is centered about after all. It also signals the creation of Rivendell. It's almost a dead certainty that this is coming, and our socks are ready to be blown off. Then there's the forging of the One Ring. The ending of the first season saw the title of the show finally live up to its name. We see Celebrimbor forge the first of the Rings of Power, and we also see who gave him a helping hand in how they could be created. None other than Halbrand, aka Sauron. We know that the central ring that Isildur, Gollum, Bilbo, and Frodo all carry in the future is crafted by Sauron in the fires of Mount Doom. In the knowledge that Halbrand helped in the creation of the first Rings of Power,
couldn't the right alloy also amplify those qualities?
It makes sense as to how he went on to create his own. We should expect that as Sauron's power grows stronger next season, it wouldn't be of any surprise if he decides to create his own ring based off his experience with the elves. It would be a pretty epic moment to see the process of his creation in contrast to the dreamlike sequence we got when Celebrimbor and the elves made theirs. For the next spot, answers in Rhûn. Throughout the first season, we have the Stranger following a strange constellation. This heads them off in the direction that leads to the land of Rhûn, where it's expected that they will get answers to it, and also maybe some answers about the Stranger himself. It's worth noting that this all seems to be setting up something quite new. The journey to Rhûn has been completely made fresh for the series, and with the belief that the Stranger is Gandalf, he's arrived in Middle-earth a whole age early. So what does this open up? Well, it could bring him into contact with some familiar faces, such as Radagast the Brown and Saruman the White. What? Gandalf has arrived early, why can't they? It would be an interesting twist if all three of the wizards arrived in Middle-earth at the same time, and have all been led to Rhûn in some way, which is where they end up meeting for the first time. Although, other wizards could come into the mix, which leads us on to the Blue Wizards. Now, the Blue Wizards, according to Tolkien's lore, were the earliest to arrive in Middle-earth, and were originally present in the Second Age, though it is said that they are the most mysterious of the known wizards in Middle-earth. They're known, however, as Alatar and Palando, and were sent to Middle-earth to help in taking down Sauron's forces from the east. Rhûn, to be exact. With the fact that the Blue Wizards have never been seen before on screen, and that the stranger is headed to Rhûn, where they reside, it would make sense to use the opportunity to give us some new wizarding types, and have the show forge its own type of wizard to leave its stamp on. As we mentioned, they're known to be the most mysterious of all the wizards introduced into Tolkien's fantasy world.
Then there are the two blue wizards. I've quite forgotten their names.
A clean slate means doing whatever the heck you want. Hopefully, the showrunners have some fun with them. There does also happen to be another little something to expect from the stranger and Nori's adventure to Rhûn. The beginning of the Ringwraith's origins. Something you probably wouldn't have expected, but let us explain why this is a likely candidate for one of the plot threads in Season 2. Rhûn is noted, by Tolkien himself, as being home to the Easterlings at one point. The Easterlings, known as swarthy men in early times, were often known as enemies of the Free Peoples. One of the lords of the Easterlings was an individual known as Khamûl. Now, this is where things get interesting. Khamûl happens to be one of only 2 named lords of men who became a Ringwraith. With this in mind, it wouldn't surprise us if the stranger and Nori come across him on their adventures to and in Rhûn. We probably can also expect that his corruption will begin to unfold at some point in the season. And finally, the distributing of the other rings of power. The finale saw 3 rings being crafted for the elves. It looks likely that Sauron's will be in the shop being worked on sometime soon. That's all we have for now, meaning there's another 16 to be forged and shined up. 9 for men and 7 for the dwarf lords. There's just the question of how and why they'll be forged. It's worth noting that some recipients are known by name, but that others are basically unknown. The show has a big opportunity to introduce new characters and also maybe give us some guesswork and twists as to who will be receiving them. For this point, it seems to be a very likely plot thread to at least show the beginnings of in the next season. But unfortunately, it's doubtful we'll know any more on the matter until the show debuts once again. So there's a lot of exciting stuff to expect in Season 2, so you better make sure you keep your Amazon Prime Video subscription, especially seeing as there's sure to be a number of other elements to expect as the Rings of Power returns. Did you expect any of these to be present in Season 2? Is there something we didn't mention that you think is sure to pop up or be developed? Let us know in the comment section below. Now, can someone point me in the direction of Rhûn?
When in doubt, Eleanor Brandyfoot. Always follow your nose.